I and my husband Derek have been married for 7 years, and my grandmother moved in with us about 3 years ago after she had a stroke. My brother Ethan lives nearby and visits often to help with grandma's care and generally keep the peace in our household. So here's the deal. Cooking has always been a huge part of my family's identity. My grandmother was a professional chef before retiring, and she taught me everything I know about cooking. Some of my earliest memories are of standing in her kitchen learning to chop vegetables or stir a sauce. It's not just about food for us, it's about heritage, tradition, and honestly, how we show love to each other. Over the past 2 years, I've been noticing something weird with my cooking. Dishes that I've made successfully for years would suddenly turn out wrong. Sometimes the flavor would be off, sometimes the texture was weird, and sometimes they were completely inedible. At first, I blamed it on stress or maybe changes in ingredient quality. It wasn't like it happened every time, just often enough that I started doubting myself and my skills. When it first started happening, I was confused because these were recipes I could make easily. I'd double and triple check ingredients, wondering if I'd somehow forgotten something basic after years of cooking the same dishes. My grandmother would give me smiles when something didn't turn out right, and I could tell she was trying not to hurt my feelings. The whole thing was making me doubt myself. Yesterday was my grandmother's birthday, and I wanted to make her favorite Hungarian goulash, a recipe that's been in our family for generations. It takes hours to get right, and I was determined not to mess it up. I'd been prepping ingredients all day. It was coming along, and I was feeling relieved that her special birthday dinner wouldn't be ruined. I had stepped away to grab something from the pantry when I heard a cabinet open in the kitchen. Thinking Derek was just getting a snack, I didn't rush back. But as I was heading back to the kitchen, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was Derek standing over the pot of goulash, pouring maple syrup into a traditional savory Hungarian dish. And then he sprinkled cinnamon into it, stirred it, and put the lid back on. I just stood there, completely stunned. This wasn't some random occurrence. This was why my cooking had been failing. My husband has been deliberately sabotaging my food for years now. When I finally found my voice, I asked him what the hell he was doing. He actually laughed and said he was just adding some excitement to what he called my boring traditional cooking, like it was some kind of joke. My hands were shaking as everything made sense. All those times I thought I'd failed at recipes I'd made 100 times before, all those moments of self-doubt and frustration, the disappointed looks on my grandmother's face, it was all because of him. When I pushed him on it, Derek actually admitted that he'd been adjusting my cooking for years, sometimes draining fats that were crucial to the recipe, sometimes adding bizarre ingredients, sometimes even changing the temperature on the oven when I wasn't looking. I asked him why he would do this to meals I spent hours making, especially knowing how important they were to me and my grandmother. His response? It reminded him of his experimental days in college when he and his friends would get high and create weird food combinations. That was his reason. That's it. In the middle of our argument, my grandmother entered the kitchen, confused about why dinner wasn't ready for her birthday celebration. Before I could explain anything, Derek switched gears, telling her that unfortunately I had ruined another meal and suggested we order takeout. Her reaction was upsetting. So that's how my grandmother's birthday ended, with her eating takeout instead of her favorite family recipe, while Derek comforted her and subtly reinforced that I had somehow messed up again. I spent most of the night crying in our bedroom, trying to process what had happened. This morning, I tried to explain to my grandmother what really happened, but she seemed confused, and I'm not sure she fully understood. Derek is acting like nothing happened, like it was just a harmless prank and I'm overreacting. He actually said, "It's just food. What's the big deal?" I'm questioning everything now. It's not just about the ruined meals. It's about the years of gaslighting, making me think I was failing at something that's deeply important to me. It's about him systematically undermining my confidence while pretending to be supportive. It's about him disrespecting my heritage and my connection to my grandmother. My brother Ethan is coming over tonight, and I'm planning to tell him everything. Derek doesn't know I'm doing this, but I need someone else in my corner right now because I'm struggling. I keep going back and forth between feeling absolutely furious and wondering if maybe I am overreacting. But then I remember the look on my grandmother's face yesterday, and I know I'm not. Edit. I'm absolutely floored by how many people have responded with similar stories of partners sabotaging their cooking. I didn't realize this was such a common form of gaslighting, and it's both validating and heartbreaking to know I'm not alone. Also, to everyone suggesting I get revenge by tampering with his food, while tempting, I'm not going to stoop to his level, especially with something as important as food safety. I never thought I'd be posting here about my husband secretly ruining meals I've spent hours preparing, especially ones tied to my family's cultural heritage. The betrayal runs deeper than just the wasted food. It's about the intentional undermining of something he knows is deeply important to me and my relationship with my grandmother. I don't want to make a decision about our marriage that I'll regret later, so any outside perspective would help, especially from anyone who's dealt with this kind of subtle manipulation. Now for the first update. First of all, holy crap, you guys. I never expected my post to blow up like it did. I've been reading your comments nonstop and honestly crying at how supportive everyone has been through this whole cooking sabotage nightmare. It's been about a week since I posted about catching Derek red-handed pouring maple syrup into my grandmother's birthday goulash. Things have definitely escalated, but not in the way I expected. Isn't that always how it goes, though? 2 days after my post, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through some of your comments when Derek stormed into the living room. Apparently, someone from his work had sent him a screenshot of my post saying, "Dude, is this you?" He was livid. Not about what he'd done, mind you, but about me humiliating him online. During his rant, he dropped the bomb that he'd actually made his own Reddit post defending himself. I couldn't believe it. According to him, I was being controlling and precious about my cooking, and he was just adding excitement to my boring traditional recipes. The absolute audacity of this man. When I finally got a chance to read his post, I couldn't believe it. He actually claimed my grandmother preferred his improved versions of our family recipes. He wrote that she was too polite to tell me my cooking needed help. I showed his post to my grandmother, who became upset. That's when she admitted she'd been confused about why family recipes suddenly tasted wrong, but had assumed her taste buds were failing with age. I'm still not over this revelation, honestly. That evening, I decided enough was enough. While Derek was at work, I invited my grandmother to supervise while I prepared a traditional family dinner, following recipes passed down for generations. You should have seen her as we cooked together. First time in months, she's shown real excitement about anything. When Derek got home, my grandmother was teaching me techniques just like she used to. I noticed Derek hovering near the stove when I left to help my grandmother to the bathroom. I've become hyper-aware of his movements in the kitchen now. I hurried back and, surprise, found him reaching for the spice cabinet with a container of cayenne pepper in his hand over the pot of cream sauce I'd spent an hour on. When I confronted him, he got super defensive, claiming he was just looking for a drink. With cayenne pepper? Really? The worst part was my grandmother witnessed the whole thing. She started speaking in Hungarian to me, expressing how heartbroken she was realizing that years of failed cooking attempts weren't my fault at all. Derek rolled his eyes at our Hungarian conversation and muttered about being ganged up on by the cooking police, and asked why I couldn't take a joke about something as trivial as food. My grandmother shocked us both by switching to English and saying, "Food is never just food. It is memory, heritage, and love made tangible." I've never been prouder of her in my life. After dinner, I suggested what I thought was a reasonable compromise. I would cook separate meals for Derek if he wanted to experiment with his food, but he needed to stop tampering with dishes meant for me and my grandmother. His reaction was unexpected. He became emotional, claiming I was excluding him from the family, and that his food modifications were his way of being part of our traditions. Many of you predicted this kind of manipulation, and you were spot on. When I pressed him about why he continued after seeing how upset it made me, he couldn't give me any real explanation beyond saying he found it entertaining to see how dishes turned out with his additions. Who does that to someone they supposedly love? Several commenters suggested this was gaslighting 101, and I'm starting to see it now. My brother Ethan called that night to check in. After hearing the full story, he pointed out something. This wasn't about food at all, but about Derek's need to control and undermine my confidence in something he knows I value. The more I think about it, the more examples I can see of this pattern in other areas of our marriage. How did I miss this for so long? Some of you asked about my grandmother's health through all this. She's actually been more energetic since we started cooking together again without Derek's improvements. It's reconnecting with part of herself that had been slowly fading, which makes me even angrier about what Derek has been doing. I've started documenting everything now, keeping a journal of incidents and taking pictures of meals before I leave the kitchen, as many of you suggested. Derek has been sulking since our confrontation, making passive-aggressive comments about how boring dinner is now that he can't help. He's also started ordering a lot of takeout rather than eating what I cook, which honestly feels like a relief. The most bizarre part of all this? Derek's friends have actually been texting him saying they're Team Derek after reading his post, telling him I'm overreacting about a little food prank. His post conveniently left out that he's been doing this for years and letting me think I was losing my cooking skills. One friend even suggested Derek start a cooking YouTube channel showcasing his creative additions to traditional recipes. I can't even. Many of you asked about my feelings toward Derek now. Thank you for caring about my emotional state through all this. Honestly, I'm struggling with how someone I loved and trusted could so casually undermine something they knew was deeply important to me. It's not just about the food. It's about the years of watching me doubt myself and saying nothing. It's about seeing my grandmother's disappointment and letting me take the blame. It's about making me question my connection to something that has always been a core part of my identity. I've been sleeping in the guest room since the confrontation. Derek keeps saying I'm being dramatic and that normal couples fight and get over it, as if deliberately sabotaging my cooking for years is just a normal marital spat. Several of you mentioned couples therapy in your comments, but I'm not even sure that's the right move when trust has been broken so fundamentally. My brother Ethan is coming over tomorrow to help me figure out next steps. He mentioned that he's noticed other concerning behaviors from Derek over the years, but didn't want to interfere in our marriage. Wish he had said something sooner, but I probably wouldn't have believed him anyway. Edit. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, we've been married for 7 years total. No, we don't have children. 3. The house is in both our names. 4. My grandmother has been living with us for 3 years since her stroke. 5. Derek has always seemed supportive of her moving in, but now I'm questioning everything. I genuinely thought this was just about Derek being weird about food, but your comments helped me see it's about so much more than that. I've saved some of your insights about recognizing gaslighting and emotional manipulation to read when I start doubting myself again. Thank you all for helping me realize I'm not crazy for being devastated by this betrayal. Now for the second update. Update 3. I know it's been a minute since my last post about the cooking saboteur I married, but things have seriously escalated and I needed time to process everything. Thanks for all the support and advice on my previous posts. It's been about 3 weeks since my last update, and I've basically been cooking separate meals, traditional stuff for me and Grandma, while Derek fends for himself. He's been sulking big time about this arrangement, making these little passive-aggressive comments like, enjoying your special food that's too good for me, whenever he walks through the kitchen. I've been trying to ignore it, but it's exhausting living with someone. Unfortunately, Grandma's health took a concerning turn last week. Nothing immediately life-threatening, thank goodness, but her doctor mentioned that her appetite has decreased and she seems more withdrawn lately. The doctor suggested that having family around might boost her spirits, since she's been feeling isolated. I immediately started planning a big family gathering. Several of my elderly aunts and uncles agreed to travel from different states just to see her, which is a big deal since some of them rarely travel anymore. For those wondering about my brother Ethan, he's been coming by more often to help out. He's been my rock through all of this, offering to run errands and even staying late some nights just to give me emotional support after Derek goes to bed. Seriously, what would we do without siblings who actually have our backs? I decided to make tultut kaposta as the centerpiece dish for our family dinner. This wasn't just any recipe. It's the dish my grandfather proposed to my grandmother over, and retelling that story has been a tradition at every family gathering for decades. The recipe takes hours to perfect, with this specific paprika that has to be imported and a technique for rolling the cabbage that Grandma spent years teaching me. In the days leading up to the gathering, Derek's resentment about being excluded from meal prep reached new levels. He kept making these snide remarks about my food obsession and how my cooking wasn't that special and anyone could follow a recipe. I mostly ignored him and focused on preparing everything. The morning of the gathering, I was up at 5 a.m. starting the prep work. Derek surprised me by offering to help, suddenly showing unusual interest in the recipes and process. Around noon, my brother arrived early with our aunt. Apparently, her hotel reservation had gotten lost and they had nowhere to stay. I had to step away from the kitchen to make some urgent calls to find alternative accommodations. Derek assured me he would just keep an eye on things while I was gone. I'm an idiot, I know. You don't need to say it. When I returned to the kitchen about 30 minutes later, I immediately knew something was wrong. The cabbage rolls looked different, and there were chocolate shavings in the sauce. I'm not even making this up. Derek was standing there, and when I asked what he'd done, he casually mentioned that he'd fixed the bland recipe. According to him, the elderly relatives wouldn't know the difference and might appreciate some modern flair in the traditional dish. The audacity of this man continues to astound me. As I was processing this disaster, my aunt walked into the kitchen. She took one look at the pot and immediately asked, "Who ruined your grandmother's tolta kaposta?" She could tell that something was wrong with the dish her own mother had perfected and passed down through generations. Within minutes, more relatives arrived and gathered in the kitchen, all of them confused. Derek tried to laugh it off, suggesting they were all too stuck in their ways to appreciate culinary innovation. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. Then my uncle looked directly at Derek and said, "Why would you disrespect not just the food, but what it means to our family?" The kitchen went silent. Derek had no response. Mini update before I continue. Several of you messaged asking how my grandmother reacted in the moment. She was the last to enter the kitchen, supported by my cousin. When she saw everyone standing around the pot, she initially thought we were admiring the dish. The look on her face when she realized what had happened absolutely broke my heart. She didn't even say anything. She just sat down at the kitchen table and quietly wiped tears from her eyes. We ended up ordering takeout for dinner. Yes, takeout for a gathering that relatives had traveled hundreds of miles for, specifically to taste traditional Hungarian cooking that reminded them of home and loved ones who had passed. The entire evening had this tense, awkward atmosphere. Everyone tried to comfort Grandma, who kept apologizing to me. I'm still furious thinking about this part. Later that night, after everyone had left or gone to bed, Derek had the nerve to complain to me about my family being dramatic over food. He actually said they were using their culture as a weapon against him and his creativity. I was too emotionally drained to even argue with him at that point. My brother Ethan stayed after everyone else left and dropped a bombshell. He told me he'd noticed Derek smirking when my grandmother was crying, not looking guilty or embarrassed, but actually seeming to enjoy the chaos he'd created. This detail made my blood run cold, and suddenly a lot of other behaviors started making more sense. I ended up sleeping in my grandmother's room that night. I couldn't bear to be in the same bed as Derek, and honestly, I was worried about leaving Grandma alone when she was so upset. As I lay there, I couldn't stop thinking about how what started as food tampering had revealed something much deeper and more disturbing about my marriage. The next morning, I woke up to find Derek had left for work without saying goodbye. He texted me later saying he was giving me space to get over my overreaction and that he would pick up dinner on his way home, so I wouldn't have to worry about cooking. My brother came over again and helped me make a proper meal for Grandma, a simple chicken paprikash that she actually ate. While we were cooking, Ethan gently suggested that Derek's behavior fits a pattern of emotional abuse, not just food-related sabotage. He pointed out how Derek consistently undermines my confidence, dismisses my heritage, and then makes me feel crazy for being upset. I hate that my brother was right, but hearing someone else validate my feelings made me realize I wasn't overreacting. I've been documenting everything in a journal, taking photos of dishes before I leave the room, and even set up a small camera in the kitchen with Grandma's permission. Some might think this is excessive, but after years of gaslighting, I need concrete evidence of what's happening. The most unexpected support has come from my extended family. 3 of my aunts have been calling daily to check on Grandma and me. My uncle emailed me links to resources about emotional abuse. Even my cousin sent me a care package with imported Hungarian spices and a note that just said, "Never doubt your cooking or your worth." I sobbed for an hour after opening it. I'm at a point where I need to make some serious decisions about my marriage. Part of me still struggles to accept that the man I married could be so deliberately cruel about something he knows is deeply meaningful to me. But another part of me knows that respect is fundamental in a marriage, and Derek has shown none. Not for me, not for my grandmother, not for my heritage. Eat it. Several people have asked if Derek has shown this kind of behavior in other areas of our relationship. Looking back, there have been red flags I ignored. He's accidentally deleted photos I was proud of, constructively criticized presentations I worked hard on for work until I doubted myself, and even once improved a painting I did by adding his own touches while I was out. I always chalked it up to him being helpful or not understanding boundaries, but now I see it for what it is, a systematic effort to undermine my confidence and assert control. I'm trying to stay calm and think clearly about next steps while focusing on caring for my grandmother through all this. Thank you to everyone who's been checking in and offering advice. Your support has been a lifeline during the darkest moments of this ordeal. Now for the final update. Final update on my culinary saboteur husband. I still can't believe this whole saga is real. First, thank you so much to everyone who commented on my previous posts with advice, support, and validation. You truly helped me see things clearly when I was questioning my own sanity. It's been about 2 weeks since the disastrous family dinner where Derek ruined my grandmother's toltek kaposta in front of my entire extended family. The morning after that nightmare, I woke up with this weird sense of clarity that I hadn't felt in years. After everyone left that morning, I asked Derek to pack some essentials and stay with his friend for a while. I needed space to think without him hovering around, making comments about how I was overreacting to a little seasoning experiment. He tried arguing at first, but I think even he could tell he'd crossed a major line. He finally left after my brother showed up and just silently stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. Bless Ethan for his strong demeanor. Once Derek was gone, the house felt different, lighter somehow. My grandmother actually started eating properly again, and her color improved within days. Turns out having someone constantly undermining your granddaughter's cooking isn't great for elderly appetites. Who knew? She started sitting with me in the kitchen again like she used to, telling stories about my grandfather and teaching me little techniques I'd forgotten. While cleaning our bedroom, I found Derek's journal tucked behind some books on his nightstand. I know reading someone's journal is generally a violation of privacy, but given everything that had happened, I felt I deserved some answers. And honestly, after years of gaslighting, I needed confirmation I wasn't crazy. What I found: there were multiple entries describing how he got a rush watching me doubt myself when recipes failed. He actually wrote that he enjoyed the power of secretly altering my cooking and watching me try to figure out what went wrong. The most disturbing part was an entry from right after our honeymoon where he wrote, "Found Alice's weakness today, her cooking confidence. Easy target when I need to put her in her place." I photographed those pages, documentation, as many of you advised, and then put the journal exactly where I found it. That night, I sobbed for hours, not because I was sad my marriage was over, but because I finally understood that I'd spent years with someone who deliberately tried to make me doubt myself. My brother came over almost daily during this time. One evening, he helped me see that Derek's behavior wasn't just about food. It was a pattern across our whole relationship. The time he accidentally deleted photos I was proud of right before I was going to submit them to a contest. When he improved a presentation I'd worked on for weeks by completely restructuring it the night before my big meeting. All those little helpful suggestions that somehow always made me feel less capable. How did I not see this sooner? After about 2 weeks of separation, Derek texted asking to meet and discuss our future. He suggested a cafe downtown, neutral territory. I agreed, thinking it was time to have a real conversation about where things stood. My brother offered to wait nearby just in case things didn't go well. Overprotective, maybe, but I appreciated it. When I arrived at the cafe, Derek was already there with a folder full of printed Reddit comments. Yes, really. He'd found posts from people defending food tampering as just a harmless prank between couples and a way to add excitement to routine married life. He slid the stack across the table. I just stared at him, wondering how I'd ever found this man charming. "I've done some reflecting," he said, sounding rehearsed. "I think we both overreacted to what was essentially just me trying to add some creativity to our home cooking. When I pointed out that he'd deliberately ruined a dish that held deep cultural significance for my family, he actually rolled his eyes. 'That's the problem with your family,' he said. 'Everything's so precious and traditional. Your grandmother uses that old country guilt trip whenever she doesn't get her way.' I felt surprisingly calm as I realized this man had never respected me or my heritage. The Tultet Kaposta wasn't just food, Derek. It was my grandfather's marriage proposal to my grandmother. It was my childhood. It was the last connection some of my relatives have to people who died decades ago." "See, that's what I mean," he scoffed. "It's convenient excuse-making. It's just cabbage and meat." That's when our conversation took an even darker turn. As I remained calm, he became increasingly agitated. His voice got louder as he leaned across the table. "You know what? Your cooking skills are the only thing you had going for you. I felt threatened by how everyone always praised you for it. Alice makes the best this, and Alice's that is amazing. Nobody ever compliments me like that." I just stared at him, finally seeing the insecurity behind his cruelty. He must have interpreted my silence as weakness because he kept going, eventually saying, "You're nothing without me. I've been doing you a favor all these years, making your boring cooking more interesting. You should be thanking me." The cafe had gone quiet. People were staring at us, at him. The manager approached our table and asked Derek to lower his voice or leave. That's when Derek snapped. He stood up, knocking over my coffee cup. I'm positive it was deliberate, the way he swept his arm across the table, sending coffee across the table and onto my clothes. "I should have added something special to your drink when I had the chance," he hissed as he gathered his folder of Reddit comments. Outside the cafe, Derek found my brother waiting. Turns out Ethan had been sitting at a table in the corner the whole time. Derek started to say something, but then noticed Ethan holding up his phone. My brilliant brother had recorded the entire exchange, including Derek's threatening comment about my drink. 3 days later, I filed for separation. When Derek started showing up at our house unannounced, usually late at night when he thought my brother wouldn't be there, I used Ethan's recording as evidence for a restraining order. The judge granted it immediately after hearing Derek's "added something special to your drink" comment. Sometimes the system actually works. Derek tried contacting me through coworkers. HR at his company was informed of the restraining order, and he received a formal warning about using company resources for personal harassment. Apparently, this incident was added to an already existing file. Seems I wasn't the first woman to report concerning behavior from him. The most surprising support came from Derek's parents. After seeing Ethan's recording, they called me to apologize. His mother tearfully admitted they'd seen similar controlling behaviors in previous relationships, but had convinced themselves he'd matured with me. They offered to help with my grandmother's care if I needed anything. I didn't expect that kindness from them. It's been almost a month since I filed for separation, and my life feels completely different. My grandmother and I are cooking together every day. Last weekend, we hosted a proper family dinner with all the traditional dishes made correctly. The joy on my grandmother's face as she watched everyone enjoying her recipes was worth every bit of pain I've gone through. Looking back, I can see now that what started as just food tampering was always about control and undermining my confidence. I've started therapy to understand why I stayed so long with someone who systematically tried to make me doubt myself. The therapist suggested it might take time to fully trust my instincts again, but I'm already feeling stronger, just knowing I'm not crazy, and having those journal photos as validation helps too. Edit. So many of you have asked about my grandmother. She's doing really well now. Her doctor says her improved appetite has made a significant difference in her overall health. She's even talking about teaching cooking classes at the community center for seniors who want to pass down their family recipes. How amazing is that for a 78-year-old? As for me, I'm taking things one day at a time. My brother helped me set up a small catering business specializing in traditional Hungarian cuisine, and I've already booked 3 events. Turns out when you remove the person sabotaging your cooking, you rediscover just how good you actually are at it. Thank you, Reddit, for helping me see what was happening when I couldn't see it myself. Sometimes it takes thousands of internet strangers pointing out the obvious for you to finally accept the truth about your relationship. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know it involves a lot of properly seasoned Hungarian food and exactly zero sabotage.